All right. I feel like every week, Emma, I keep saying, this is exciting, but I'm so excited every week. So today I get to talk for the third time with Emma Gray, who, how long ago was it that the last Love Note came out? Was that
That was 2023.
it? Okay. So it hasn't, okay. Cause I was thinking last night, gosh, this almost feels like, for me anyway, when I would get pregnant and then I would see someone and I'd be newly pregnant. And then fast forward, 17 years and I'd have the baby and they'd say, oh my gosh, that went so fast. And I
Mm.
was like, no, it was like, it didn't. Like it
No,
really
I totally
didn't.
understand,
But
yes.
I feel like the last 3 years, I remember when we were talking about the last love note, and then we talked about pictures of you because you were working on that. Then we talked about pictures of you, and we talked about start at the end. Although, was it titled that always from the beginning?
This one was, yeah, this
Okay.
is one of the few books that actually had the title right from the beginning, which
From the
is
beginning.
unusual because most of the time they change.
Yeah. Well, so the premise of this is so intriguing, and I don't think just to me. The comparison has been made to Sliding Doors, the movie Sliding Doors, which was, oh my god, was that like in the 90s? I mean, it's a
Evergreen, yes, yeah.
right? Like with Gwyneth Paltrow, it's a much older movie, but this kind of concept of if you knew, like start at the end, right? And as a person who loves to control things and know how they're going to end and whether they'll be air quote worth it,
Mm.
man, would I love to start at the end. I'm curious where the idea came from for you.
Well, I think I've always been intrigued, like a lot of other people, with this idea of what if I'd made a different choice or what if this had happened differently? Because sometimes things happen to us and other times we bring things upon ourselves by making decisions. And then our lives just scurry off in this different direction. And then you're sort of down that path and sometimes looking back and thinking, what would have happened if this was the other way around or if I'd done things differently? And in my case, when I'd been through 10 years ago now, this huge life altering event of losing my husband and then being plunged into a life I didn't ask for,
Mhm.
um, I have sometimes wondered what would have happened if this had been the other way around and if it had been me? And what would have happened to my family? Where would they be living? And it sort of put me in the mindset of
Mhm.
this is the case with so many things in our lives that at any point, I think we just sort of naively go through thinking we're okay, it's all going to happen, and that sense of control that you
Mhm.
mentioned, and we don't really have much control at all.
Mhm.
And what I wanted to do, I think, was to convince myself that whatever had happened, it would have been okay, and that my family would have been okay, and that this path is that I'm on now. I think you and I have probably spoken before about the survivor guilt that I have for having ended up in a career that really began taking off because I had been writing about grief and, having to get my head around the fact that my husband would have been so happy for me and so proud of what I've been doing. But that's been hard to accept. And, I would rather be the other way around where it hadn't happened and I hadn't written these books. And, so that kind of thought was swirling in my mind. And I love the idea too that we're never too old to start again. And that I think, in the last I'm now 52, a lot of what's happened in my life, a lot of the most exciting things that have happened in my life started at 49, 50, 51.
Mhm.
You know, I've got young children. Well, they're not young. Two of them are in their 20s and one's a teenager. And I sometimes look at them watching me and my middle-aged friends, and I remember thinking at their age, "Oh, it's all over by 50," like, I'd look at 50-year-old women and think, "They're,
I still think that.
wrong."
Like, I
And
see someone make a Facebook post that
yeah,
says, like, my 50th birthday celebration,
yeah,
and I think,
yeah,
"Oh god, you're decrepit," and then
I
and
know.
I'm 53, so I have absolutely no
But
Yeah,
I've realized you're still the same inside. You're still this,
yeah.
you've got this sort of youthful, exuberance and still so much potential in life. And I think that's what I wanted to capture in this book, the sense that it isn't over, that we can restart multiple times in our lives at any age. And I love this thought that at any moment right now, when the two of us are sitting here talking, there are things in our future that we cannot even imagine. There are people we haven't met. There are places we haven't seen. There's hobbies we're going to take up that we're going to love. And we spoke about that when we were talking about pictures of you and
Mhm.
my photography hobby. And,
Yeah.
I hadn't had that hobby when I knew my husband. He would be
Yeah.
amazed to walk in and find that now. So that kind of hopeful feeling that despite some of the most difficult things that could happen to you, there is always this opportunity to begin again.
Mhm.
And I think because it is this year the 10th anniversary of my loss, I can't think of a more um, appropriate book to be talking about
Yeah.
this notion that we've still got a lovely potential future ahead of us.
I've long been fascinated with your writing process because I remember talking about it with The Last Love Note, and then, of course, when we talked about pictures of you, it was like, how have things changed? What for you how did you do this one? So if you're starting at the end,
Yeah.
did you literally with this book start at the end or
Well, as usual, I did start somewhere that it no longer starts at. I started in the middle,
right.
which is now
Someone recently I think that's like an approach to
yeah.
start in the middle.
Well, I'm sure it is. I don't mean to make it an approach, but it's
Okay.
just how it's happened. So, in fact, with this book, it was even more complicated because I had some editorial advice early on, with a different layer, another layer of an idea on top of what I've ended up with.
Okay.
And I tried to make this happen. I can't tell you what it is because it's a bit of a spoiler, but I really tried to make this extra layer of complexity work, and it just didn't work in the end, and it was too confusing. So there was one whole draft this time that we just had to abandon, because it had gone in a direction that just would have taken away from the essence of the book and confused the reader with this sort of attempt to do a clever thing, that didn't work. So so
Okay.
there was one whole draft, that
Literally all of it.
well, I had to pretty much start again, which
Okay.
is very apt for the name of the book.
Right.
But, and every time I enter a book now, I think, "Okay, what did I do last time that made things difficult for me and for the
Mhm.
editors? Let's not do that again."
Mhm.
And then I just proceed to do more mistakes, different things, different it's like having children, you think you
Right.
know what you're doing, and you don't.
Oh
You
my
get this
gosh.
different child, and so
Yeah.
then it has to be adapted. So each time I've learnt certain things
Mhm.
and not repeated those not fallen into those same traps, and then I've promptly fallen into different ones.
Right.
So, um,
What are
again
some of those out of curiosity? What were some of the traps that you
well, in that case, it was just sort of trying to do something too clever and complex that didn't
okay.
work. Sometimes when I've been writing into points of view, I remember with the last love note. No, the last love note was one point of view, then pictures of you was two.
Mhm.
I had to really get my head around things like the story needs to continue forward when you've got 2 points of view and not say the same thing again from the other person's perspective and that
Mm.
kind of little thing. Um, I remember with the last love note that because I'm not a plotter, I remember getting to a point and thinking, "I don't know what's happening here, but I need words on the page." So I just sort of wrote I think it was 2 or 3 chapters in a row that we eventually just cut because,
Okay.
as my editor said, "There's not enough story engine in
Mhm.
this particular bit." What was the point of those chapters? And I was thinking, to get words on to get the
Yeah.
word limit, basically, you know?
So I could feel like I did something today with my writing
That's
session?
right, because,
Yeah.
you are just trying to get a draft on the page so that
Right.
you can then have something to edit and
Yeah.
something to work on. Um, I then Pictures of You was such a complicated plot, and it had some crime elements in it, and,
Mhm.
I'd never written anything like that before, so after that process, my editors said, "I think I know that you don't plot the books, but maybe this time could we try just a little bit of plotting?"
So did you?
I tried.
Okay.
I went to this big stationery store here in
Uh-huh.
Australia, and I bought a big stick-on whiteboard that is on my kitchen wall, and, I got Post-it notes, and I have,
Mhm.
put all the plot points up there and then just walk past it every day and end up
Right.
writing my grocery list on the whiteboard. So, I
Very
did
relatable.
find
Yeah.
but what I did find this time was that having those Post-it notes after I did get into the editing process really helped, because I would color code them for each point of view,
Mhm.
and also because I'm flashing forward and back in time, I would color code them for which timeline as well, and it helped the editing to be able to see the book on one piece of wall.
Yeah.
So, because I think you can use a whole lot of software and, planning tools on the computer, but at the end of the day, it's still hard to see the whole thing in big picture, and
Yeah.
so I did find that helpful, and I will do that again. So that's one thing I've picked up from this one.
Well,
Um,
it's funny because, actually the episode that'll go live tomorrow is with Alexandra Potter.
mm,
And so
oh,
she had the loveliest things to say about you, which I will share with you when we get
that's so
off because I
nice.
don't have permission to share with the whole entire world, but it was just a really cute, fun story. But, she was talking about how she's like the ultimate plotter.
Yes.
They're just Post-it notes almost for days. Like, as she was describing it, I was thinking about a true crime when they have the bulletin board
Well,
and everything. Yes, that's what I could envision, and I just thought, wow, and I've heard everything in between,
mm,
from that level of detail to, like, I just start with an idea and kinda go, which,
yeah.
um, I
It's interesting because the book that I'm writing for next year has gone
Mhm.
astray. It's gone off what's the word? Not
The
offline.
path.
Off
It's
the path,
okay.
it really has. To the point where rather than us try to pull it back in and rescue this story, these for this sort of series of books, not that they're a series, but, in
Uh-huh.
this family of work, I am going to repurpose the whole thing, and, I've already spoken actually to the TV producer who I'm working with on the Pictures of You TV
Mhm.
series that we're developing at the moment, because it's more along those lines, and I'm gonna start again with a different story altogether because
Okay.
so that's another thing that I'm learning as I go is that now that I do have, um, 3 books for this audience, they will expect certain things and a certain emotional depth and all these sort of themes and that kind of thing, and even though each of the books are quite different, um, there's still this I don't wanna call it branding because that's not what I mean exactly, but it's sort of this how you will have a favorite author, and when their book comes out, I'm gonna love that book before I even pick it up,
Right.
you know. And it's because you sort of know what to expect from that person, and so I think this time I think because I was spending so much time talking with the TV producer, in my head, this latest draft of the new book went I was seeing as a TV series, so it was
Uh-huh.
I was kind of writing it in a different
Sure.
way, so
Yeah.
I've learnt that's something I'm learning right now for next year, it
Yeah.
amazes me that I thought earlier on that the more books you wrote, the easier this would get, and unfortunately
That was my next question.
unfortunately, that is not the case.
Gosh darn
I
it.
I
It's
think
really
some of the writing actually in the latest draft is some of the best sentences that I've ever
Oh,
written in
mhm.
terms of the words and the writing and all of that. So that part is getting easier, but the managing the story itself and the plot and all of that,
Yeah.
that's not getting easier.
I feel like though, when we've talked before, certainly you've expressed that you like to challenge yourself with sort of something new with each book, like trying something different, whether it's multiple POV or something. And I almost feel like it because of when people do that, it prevents it from becoming easier because you're always adding in this new element. Whereas
Mm,
if you just said, well, I'm gonna, and I can think of a couple of authors, but I won't name them because it would sound like I'm being disparaging, which I don't mean to be. But there's certain books that like a Hallmark movie, right? We all know it can't be that hard to write Hallmark movie scripts because we already know the setting. We know we
Mm.
know
There's a
what we're
certain
getting.
formula,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any desire to do anything in a slightly different genre?
Um, I have it's not so much a different genre as different formats and
Uh-huh.
mediums. So I'm loving working on the TV project, and
Okay.
I do have a desire to learn how to do screenwriting.
Mhm.
And so and they have asked me would I like to be involved in, more closely involved in writing the script. And I said, "Well, I'd love to, but no, because I don't wanna mess up my own project as a complete beginner in screenwriting, but I would love to be." So they're inviting me into the writer's room with the screenwriter,
Wow.
the story editor, to sort of you know, contribute ideas,
Mhm.
but really for me, it will be a matter of observing how they do it and learning from them. So
Mhm.
I'm excited about that. And I may have mentioned to you before that I wrote a teenage novel years and years ago, 10 years,
Right.
and then my friend and I co-wrote a musical based on that. So we're in fact, I've got a meeting this week with a school to talk about staging the musical next
Oh.
year, and so that again, that just brings so much joy to me, that
Yeah.
that theatre side of things. So I think it's about telling deep, resonant love stories that are hopeful, but also don't shy away from those difficult topics like grief and,
Mhm.
um just, a number of in fact, start at the ends also touching on things like divorce and
Mhm.
touching on, dependence on alcohol, and so some very difficult topics, but always packaged in an accessible way
Yeah.
that meets readers where they are and then takes them on a process where they end up hopefully crying tears of joy at the end. But I love those sorts of stories, but the idea of presenting them in a whole lot of different ways, and so
Right.
that's where I'm sort of trying to develop my skills now,
Okay.
and we'll just see how the
What
how all of
what
that goes.
develops, yeah. Well, I would like to cry tears of joy right now if you're gonna tell me that this TV series will be in the US as well as
Well, that's the plan
okay,
eventually.
great.
So we're at the point of the development of the pilot script, the script
Okay.
for the pilot episode. And then it would be made in Australia, but certainly we've had in mind the whole way through
Mhm.
my North American Canadian audiences, and I mean that's the dream. Let's see
Yeah,
if we can make that happen.
yeah. So how does that feel? Like, sometimes I've talked to fiction writers who have had their audiobooks read by not themselves. They haven't read their audiobook, so it's been hired out, and they have felt a little odd about the way that the narrator voices certain characters because that's
Mm.
not how they heard that character in their head. How does
Yeah.
it feel to see sort of the writing room's interpretation of
Well,
your
I think I had a good grounding in this 10 years ago when we converted my book to a musical, because that process taught me that I can't cling on to the story exactly as it is
Yeah.
when it would take 10 hours to listen to an audiobook and it's an hour and a half on a school stage, so things will have to change to
Mhm.
make it work. And now, so by the time I came into this TV process, I was already in that mindset, and I said to them, the story I would actually want this to be better than the book. You know how there's this whole argument that books are better than screen
Right.
adaptations?
Right.
That's what we authors and readers like to say all the time,
Right.
and we fiercely defend the book in, you know, but it really, I would prefer that we just continue on an upward path with this
Mhm.
story. If the TV series ended up being something people loved more than the book, I would feel that that is a good direction for us to go.
Sure.
Uh, and so the other interesting thing is that we've been talking about whether or not this would be a returnable TV series,
Mm.
which would mean that the first series would sort of cover what's in the book, but then the second series would
Yeah.
be all off the book. It would be,
Yeah.
it would be that Evie, the character, becomes a forensic linguist and starts solving other crimes that
Yeah.
are not currently in my head. So that would be so exciting. I just
That
think
would be really fun
it would. It
because it's
would.
kind of there's no end to that.
That's
Like,
right.
it could just keep going. And it reminds me a little bit, speaking of Alexandra Potter, because we just
Mhm.
were, her confessions of a 40 something fuck up. And then, she even said, I could see that spanning every decade, like
Absolutely.
meaning a
Yeah.
new book for every decade. And I said,
Yeah.
well, please, because,
But let us stop you, Alexandra. No.
right, we will not stand in your way. Yeah.
No.
Wow. So,
Yeah. So it's I think there's this flexibility that you have to have, and if we get too tied down to in fact, I had this conversation with an author friend the other day who was listening to the audition tapes for her narrator for her
uh,
book, and because her book is very heavily drawn on her own personal experiences, she sort of had to get out of her head that this is not her and that,
right.
of course, they're going to sound different, and she's now found the perfect one, but I actually remember listening to the prologue from The Last Love Note, read by Leanna Walmsley, who's this brilliant Australian narrator and actor, and um, I was listening to it and was so absorbed in her narration that I was moved. This sounds so weird, but I was moved to tears by one bit,
Really?
forgetting that I had written it because her work was so well done in how she presented this that
Wow.
I was so in her emotion that for a second I forgot what I was listening to. And so I think that you have to sort of stick in your lane. I would never in a million years offer to narrate any of my books because I just I don't have that skill and other people do. So, I love to be able to hand those parts of this
Mhm.
creative process, and I also think you're either a person who loves to work with other people or not, and I
Mhm.
just love the collaborative thing of having teams of different people working on these projects.
Yeah.
We already have that as authors when we work with editors and publishers and the marketing team and then podcasters and everyone, we all sort of gather in
Yeah.
together, but to then have producers and directors and actors, and you sort of just handing it out further and further
Mhm.
and letting them take the story from here, and it's a lovely feeling.
And
I
I
mean,
think
I
I
say
think
that
what is
now.
so say
I
that last part again?
say that now, I haven't actually
Right.
said this yet. We might have
Well, we'll
interview in
get
a
a
year's time.
pulse check on that later, but I think one of the things that's so lovely about it is everybody has the same, I mean, ideally, I should say, everybody has the same goal.
Yes, that's
So
right.
I'm certain there have been instances where that's gone sideways.
I'm sure.
However, right, when everyone's goal is to help make the book the best it can be, to help showcase the book, to help get the book in the hands of as many readers as possible, to help, talk about the behind the scenes of how the book was written, because I think every readers care about different things.
Mm,
So, there are a lot of podcasts that talk about the book itself, and I
mhm,
talk a little bit more about the process and the author's journey through, and there are other podcasts that do other things, and
mm.
so I think being able to provide, it's just kind of, to me, like, you can read a book in print, or you can read it on a Kindle, or you can listen to the audiobook, or you can see it on a stage or on the screen, and different people will prefer it different ways, and some people will like it in all ways.
It's so true, so true. I mean, I love audiobooks, absolutely love
Yeah.
listening to them, and again, yesterday spoke to someone who said she's just never been able to get into an audiobook, and it's very much about the way your brain works and how you receive
Mhm.
information, what else you're doing, whether
Yeah.
you've got a long trip planned in the car,
I don't have
you
the attention span. Well, I take that back. I have the attention span. I don't have the attention to detail.
Mm,
So, if I'm listening to fiction specifically, do you ever sometimes read a book and your eyes are reading, but you're
yes,
thinking about something else, and so you have to go back? And
mhm,
so the number of times I would have to hit rewind when
yes,
I'm
okay.
driving, it's not that I've
Well,
never done it, but I have to be
it's
very,
yeah, it's gotta be a very boring road trip along a
or a
road you've
very
driven on
exciting,
many
a very
times, yeah.
a book with a lot of good pacing.
Yeah, like the it does I find it keeps me awake in the car,
Yeah.
but it's we do such long road trips here, which you do as well.
Yeah.
It's funny when I talk to people in the UK because, I spoke to someone the other day and he said he went on this very, very long drive, and I said, "How long was it?" And he said, "An hour and a half."
Right? 20
I
minutes.
said, "What?"
Right.
Do that.
Hey.
Anyway, but you
Uh-huh.
understand. But it's, I don't know, it's really interesting. I think another really quite alarming thing that I've heard of recently is that a lot of, writers of TV shows are being told to cater for the fact that people are on their phones at the same time as watching,
Oh, yeah.
and that this double screen thing, and that they need to really be sort of drumming home the plot points several times because we just don't have the attention span to sit in front of a
What do you
television show.
think of that? Like, philosophically, what do you think of about that? That's just
I'm
interesting.
horrified, but at the same
I'm a
time,
little horrified. Yeah.
I know you're talking about me, I do that. Like, I'll often have to in fact, I picked up watching Korean dramas because to try and break myself of this habit. I actually love them, but I was watching a lot of Korean romances.
In Korean or with subtitles?
No, with
Okay,
subtitles
okay. But in
because
yeah.
I
Mhm.
have to watch it. In order to follow the story, I
Right.
have to read the subtitles, and so many times I'd find myself going, "Hang on, what's happening?" and have to rewind because
Really?
I've gone onto my phone. So it's this addiction that we're battling, and, it's there's a, and I sometimes wonder too, how is all of that changing the way we write? And in the last few months, I've been diagnosed with ADHD like a lot of other people, and, I'm now on, a medication for it, and I can't tell you the difference it's made to my ability to focus while.
Really?
Yeah. I just find that previously, if I had my phone anywhere near me, but I was writing a book, I would hear it, or I'd see it flash, or I'd hear it do something, and I would just check what that was, and, half an hour later, I'm still on the phone. And now I don't need that extra stimulation. I'm so in the story.
Really?
It's incredible. It's really changed, and I feel as though my brain is able to sort out the story a bit better as well, the plot.
Interesting.
So that's also quite intriguing. So
Yeah.
I think we're up against a lot as humans. We've got a lot of distraction, um, and I find that, I remember years ago, every Saturday morning, we would get the newspapers and spend half the day reading all the articles in the magazine part of the
Right.
newspaper, and now it's just skim. We skim everything,
Right.
and so I think authors have got a lot of competition in readers' minds to hold their attention for a story these days.
So, how has that fact, because I completely agree with that, how has that changed, if at all, your approach to the marketing? Because starts at the end, comes out April 7th, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got, about another, I don't know, 6 weeks or so. How, if at all, has that changed? Does it, I'm going to lead you a little bit because, one of the things that I hear a lot from authors is, well, things aren't moving. My book isn't selling as well as I'd like, whether they'd like it to sell one a month or 100,000 a month. And a question I'll ask is, well, when was the last time you mentioned it, whether it was on social media or whatever? And they'll say, well, I posted like once or twice. And it's challenging, I think, to recognize that we don't have to do anything, but it is very helpful if we
Mm,
can post sustainably.
yeah, that's
Um, w
I find that, the consistency of showing up in your social media is really important for the entire cycle. So I think where it falls down is what you just said, where people think, "Well, I did a couple of posts." And
Mhm.
the problem is if you only do a couple of posts and they're out of the blue and you haven't been talking to your audience, they may not have even seen them for a
Right,
start.
right,
But also, uh, there's just no feeling exchanged between
right.
your readers and you if you just do a couple of posts, and then you think, "Well, that didn't work," so you give up,
So
and that
mhm,
happens a lot. But, I do work really hard on particularly on my Instagram, um, account, and it's constant. It's the whole way through the year,
mhm,
and so I love to and I have such an engaged, amazing audience on there who are and some of them I've met, some of them I'm staying with on my upcoming trip
I
to the
love
US.
that.
It's become this I'm on Instagram with the Uber driver that took me around in Chicago to bookshops because we had 5 hours in that car with him.
Yeah.
We've kept in touch. I am on there with,
Mhm.
a woman in not immigration control, the thing at the airport where you have to hand your passport over as you're coming into a new city.
Oh,
You know,
customs?
customs, yeah,
Okay.
and I'm on there with one of them,
Oh,
um,
oh,
because we hit it off,
yeah.
and so I think that's just about how you connect with people, but I
Mhm.
think in my case, the last thing that I would wanna do is just sort of be continually hitting the people on my page with nothing but promotional book
Right,
posts, because that's just
right.
boring to receive and annoying. So what I do love to do is talk to them all the way through, like, "I'm writing a new book, and here's what I'm struggling with, and here's how hard it is, and
Yeah,
here's how it's gone wrong," and all that sort of stuff all the way through, and then the editing process is also interesting, and then to lift up, the authors around you and the author friend, because we've all got so many friends that we make in the author community, and to be able to share their work,
right.
and then a little bit of sort of behind the scenes. I mean, one of the most engaged posts I've ever done was when I stumbled across this vintage van that I fell in love with recently, little
Uh-huh.
caravan, like a camper trailer, I think you
Mhm.
call them. We had this whole discussion actually, the editors and I, because we don't call them the same thing. We call
What do
them a
you call it?
caravan.
A
But
carrot,
think
okay.
of a caravan as sort of several vehicles in a row.
Mhm.
For us, it's your camper trailer. Anyway, it's from 1963. So imagine this beautiful little old van. And I've been wanting one for years, and I found one and posted that to my book community and said,
Uh-huh.
"Should I buy this?" It's the most engaged post I've ever done.
Oh,
But
see,
so
and I think people don't recognize that it's just about connecting with
Mm,
people.
that's right. And
You know?
another one that the second I would say possibly even eclipsed the caravan post was the one I did about rejection and failure. And I think again, that is the sort of stuff that I share that because it makes me feel better if
Mhm.
if I have shared that something didn't work out, because otherwise I feel very strange if I'm only sharing, the highlight reel
Good.
as we
Mhm.
and people really appreciate knowing that things are not as straightforward as they might seem if they only saw the highlight reel. So the I wrote an article for Psychology Today about failure and rejection. I then went and I was invited back to my old high school last year to do the graduation address.
Aw.
And that was sort of this life's highlight. And I basically ran them through everything that's happened that's gone wrong in my whole career until, and then at the last second said, and by the way, I'm about to write an article about this for Oprah. And, that sort of, you know, because I wanted them to hear, this is how hard it is. This is the reality of it. Don't give up. Keep
Right,
going, because this is
right.
normal. So that kind of, if you can engage with everyone on that real, open, vulnerable level, I think
Mhm.
that's where it's a fun place for the author to go in to their own social media account, if that's the kind of community that you're going
Right.
into, rather than into a silent, thing where you've got a couple of people seeing a post. And so if we can get courageous and vulnerable with it, I think that can really help.
Well, and it's also so much, at least for me, it's so much nicer to go into an Instagram because Instagram's my primary platform of choice as
Oh,
well. An ecosystem where it's not just a bunch of people saying, I made $250 million yesterday. I sold 672,000 books yesterday. There is kind of the real, not kind of, there is the real, and you're the one who shared with me, Emma. I think it was when we talked about the last love note, the rule of 100 rejections.
yes,
And
yes,
it
which
made a huge impression on me. Like, I shared it actually just a couple weeks ago. 2 of my sons are artists, and so, they're submitting for things
yeah.
constantly, and it's hard as a creative person when you either don't hear back or when you hear no. And I shared with them, "Oh, my friend Emma had this rule," and I don't think you said that it was yours
No, it's
originally,
not
like,
mine, no, but I
but
use
to me,
all the
it's
time.
yours.
In fact, this year I have fallen behind on drawing because I like to have a physical chart on my wall, and so I fell behind and didn't do it, and I said to my agent a few days ago, "Please tell me you are keeping a record of all of this year's rejections." Now, we're not even in March yet. I've already had so many, I'm worried that I'm missing some when I put them on my chart.
Yeah.
It's and it just as we said, I think it just sort of takes the sting out of
Yeah.
everyone if you've got so much going on that you sort of don't even notice some of them. You forget you even submitted it to some other thing. But, because in the past, I remember I would have one thing, one project and one goal, and it would be out with one publisher or whatever it was, and I would sit there and wait
Mhm.
and wait and wait and then be crushed when it was rejected. So, um, I couldn't continue on like that. And if we're
Yeah.
going to sign up for this kind of a career, this is just part of the process. It's about finding your way to the people that are going to love your work. And once it falls into place, then you can sort of see sense in everything that didn't work in your
Right.
wake. You look back and
Right.
think, oh, that would never have worked anyway.
Right.
Or, well, this project that I've just written is not going to work for these publishers, but it's going to work for this one over here. Or, there's a
Yeah.
whole lot of learning. And I think one thing that I don't know is talked about enough, which I feel like I'm starting to talk about more, is this mid career rejections. And because there's this sort of sense that once you've been published, that's it. It's going to be smooth from there on in. And it's not. And, the part of it is that you may be stepping up to trying for bigger things or that are more out of reach, so there's going to be more rejection there, or it's just the nature of it still.
Yeah.
I mean, it still has to, you still have to write something that these publishers they're not just gonna publish your stuff
Just
because they
because.
published you before,
Correct.
it still is, that journey. So, I really appreciate it when other authors talk about this stuff because
Yeah.
it meant you can get into a feeling of thinking that you are alone, that "What's wrong with me? Why can't I do this?" All those sorts of feelings. And so it's always great when you hear other people being open about that hard part of all of this.
I think it's one of the biggest misconceptions that once you're in the, see the air quotes, machine, that
Mm,
you're just set.
yeah.
And, while it might make me sound like kind of, a jerk, I love to continue to emphasize via my conversations with people that that's just not the case.
Yeah,
Whether you're in on the traditional side or on the indie side, there's a lot of stuff to this that is not often spoken about. I think it's being spoken about more now, which I
mm,
greatly appreciate because it makes it doesn't make any it helps people keep going.
it does. That's what it is. It doesn't make it easier. It makes
No.
it makes it sort of it just gives you the context that you're in a
Yes.
clear way. And, so, for example, I, for the last year or so, have been able to focus only on writing fiction and have been able to support myself as a writer, and that's quite an unusual situation to be in Australia. The average Australian writer earns $18,000 a year.
Okay.
So it's not enough
Right.
to live on. So most of us have always, got other jobs and we
Mhm.
write around that. And for 1 year, I've been able to just write and, I say just write, I feel like I've been busier than I've ever been in this particular year. But I've said to someone just yesterday, I haven't told myself, "Well, that's it, you're never gonna have to have a day job again." In my head, I've already got 2 or 3 other people who I've previously worked for lined up, and I've said, "If I need to come and tap you on the shoulder for some copywriting work for your business," and they said, "Yeah, that's fine, just anytime you need work," so,
Yeah.
in my head, I'm still in that place because
Yeah.
at any point, it's such a fragile career that at any point, anything could fall over. So,
Yeah.
I'm just sort of enjoying this 1 year of
Yeah.
of having, the opportunity to focus on it, but with a very realistic mindset um, that I can't sort of count my chickens, that kind of feeling.
Mhm. Yeah. Which I just think it keeps you, I mean, for a lot of people, it keeps them grounded. Some would
Yeah.
say it keeps you humble, but I think it just it keeps you realistic with your
Yes.
expectations in this space because
Yeah.
one never knows. I mean, TV pilots get can't, writers go on strike, all kinds of things happen in a
Mm.
creative space that are different from a corporate space, at least
Absolutely.
in my
Yeah. And
experience.
we don't have things like what do you call it? We call it superannuation, where your employer pays this amount of money into an account for your retirement. Is it
Oh,
401k
okay. Mhm.
or something?
Yeah, 401k.
So,
Mhm.
but when you're writing, if you're not employed by someone, you're not getting any of that. You don't get leave allowances. You're not paid when you're on. If you're not working or producing something and getting paid for it, then there's no income. And then there's the royalty cycle, which is very spread out and, twice a year.
Mhm.
And you never know what that's going to look like either.
Right.
So you sort of can't forward plan. And
Right.
that's why we have these other jobs because
Right.
we need that security. Um, and I think that's why a lot of writers will do things like, for example, this weekend I'm running a workshop for 4 hours on how to write romantic fiction. So I need to work it out between now and Saturday.
Yeah.
But well,
You
but
heard it here.
and we do a lot of what we do is also unpaid. All that marketing,
Absolutely.
these calls, podcasts,
Yeah.
which is fantastic for us because it helps in the getting the word out about
Mhm.
our book. But in another job, you might be on the clock and getting paid
Mhm.
for the sort of time that we're spending.
Sure.
So, it's really it's just it's I love this work, and then every so often my writer friends and I will say, "What are we doing? Why are we doing this to
Yeah.
ourselves?" That you do reach this point sometime. I mean, there was a time last week where I ended up crying most of the day, and it was just all really good problems to have, those sorts of problems but it
Yeah.
was just there were too many of them, and
Yes.
and I thought, "Oh my goodness." So I posted about that actually on Instagram because, again, I
Mhm.
think that's an important part of the behind the scenes
Right.
that that it's helpful to share if you feel comfortable because, otherwise it's sort of not an accurate reflection of what it's like to be a
Right.
a writer, and it's not about constantly whinging about everything. It's not that either. That's too far in that direction. It's just sort of being real and having a mix of it all.
Right. Well, and I think part of it is for readers, your readers, and a lot of it is for other writers,
Yes. Yeah.
right? I mean, sometimes there's a crossover where readers enjoy hearing about the same thing that other writers enjoy hearing about, but
Mm.
other writers are also your readers. So there's kind of this mix of yeah. So, last question, I always ask is what are you reading now or what's something you've read recently that you just loved?
Well, I am currently I wish I had it right in front of me, but hang on, I do. It's under
Oh,
how about
yay.
this? Look at this thing.
That's a cover.
I know, Sarah. So Sarah Damoff, who wrote The Bright Years, um, I posted something on my Instagram recently about grief.
Mhm.
She wasn't following my page, but it came up in her feed somehow. She commented on that. I went into fangirl mode and how lovely to hear from you and all this. Anyway, I sent her then a private message and
Mhm.
we exchanged a few messages. We then exchanged our books.
Mhm.
She then provided a beautiful endorsement for Start at the End. And now I'm reading her book and going to do the same. And so that's another thing that beautiful sense of connection you get with other
Yeah.
authors. And I'm one thing that I absolutely love about this stage of my career is the number of advance review copies that come in the mail. And sometimes I'm not expecting them and they just turn up.
Yes.
And I think I'm so privileged to be able to read this book
Yes.
right now because, there's this wait for it to come out. So,
I
uh,
get so excited when they come, for the podcast and whether I'm expecting them or not, it's always such a treat to open the front door. And first I panic because I think, I
yes.
don't remember ordering. I don't remember. And then I open it and it's gotten to where I actually know which publicist it's from based on the packaging. So
Oh, I love that. You get
I
one that can recognize their packaging.
I know, it's great. It's lovely. I'm so excited. So, well, my gosh, thank you so, so much. And will you come back for book 4? I mean, come
I'd
on.
love to. Gosh, I'm gonna have some good stories for you
I
then about
can't.
this process.
I love that I've been able to talk to you every time from book 1. That's not the
Yeah.
only other person I've done that with to my I think is Neely to Alexander, where
Oh,
1, 2, 3, and you're both on 4. So Are you drafting that? Where are you with
Yeah.
4 now so I can prepare
I
myself?
am I am. Well, I've sort of drafted one version that's now going in another direction. I'm about to start a new one. So I'm in
I
the
gotcha.
idea that I've latched onto,
Okay.
and now that I'm entering marketing for this, for Start at the End, I'm sort of just gonna collect ideas during the next
Okay.
little while and then start after
Okay.
my tour.
And
So,
then ugh,
but I love what you do. I love
thank you.
that these conversations are so important. I always feel better when I come out of a chat with you because I
Oh.
feel like everything's normalized and I feel, like I'm not in this alone after all. No,
We're all
it's
losing our minds. It's fine.
no, it's great. I
Yeah.
love
No,
I
I have so loved following your career. I love you could write you're an example, you could write thriller, you could write erotic fiction, you can write murder. I don't care. I don't care what you write. I'll read it. So if
that's
you
good
ever
to
wanna
know.
switch genres, you switch genres and I'm coming along for the ride.
Oh, thank
Thank
you.
you so
Well,
much.
thanks, Elizabeth.